that means we as helpers are at risk of re-traumatizing clients based on how we operate in the context of our relationship. But when we become trauma-informed, we can facilitate healing. And that doesn't mean you have to be a therapist or you have to be trained to be a therapist at all. I'm talking even about shelter staff and how shelter staff operate during the course of their shift can help facilitate healing. So let's get practical for a minute. And so what are some very practical things we can do? We can look at safety, because truly this is all about safety. People's brains do the things that they need to do to keep the organism safe. So what can we do to ensure a safe environment? And take a look at just some of these ideas. And you may, as you read that might generate some more of ideas of your own. Or you can kind of go through the list and kind of go, in my shelter, think about, how well lit is it? Really, where do folks have privacy? What about culture? Cultural friendly decor, is it comforting? I know in Madison we were able to get some nice, comfortable, and durable furniture in our single women shelter lounge, and the walls got painted in this nice warm beige color, and the clients really talked about how they really liked that. Those who had seen the previous decor really appreciated the new change. It felt more comfortable. It felt a little bit homey, and there was something very positive about that. But take a look at the one that says emotional safety, and what does that mean, and how do you do that? Tolerating a wide range of emotions. Now, of course, you also have safety issues in the shelter to contend with, and absolutely you do. But sometimes we get a little bit caught up with the idea of somebody responding in a particular way, that body-brain operated, that body-brain really fueled that, and we starting to see it as disrespectful. Now, certainly disrespectful behavior, like name-calling and things like that, but just from on an emotional level, if somebody's really overreacting to something that doesn't seem to merit that much reaction or explosion, to be able to stop again, drop in the trauma lens, because normally we'll react in a particular way, like, whoop, I got to write you up, or something like that. But what if you were to stop for a moment, drop the trauma lens in and say, why would they behave any other way? Are they perceiving the situation incorrectly and then being triggered from that? What about the idea of asking people what works and what doesn't work for them? And being able to, and maybe that needs to be negotiated, right? Maybe one way to deal with preferences and then the reality of limited resources is negotiating. That still allows for the person to have a voice and have participation and be empowered. Opportunities to build control. If we go back and we remember, trauma happens when the ability to protect oneself becomes overwhelmed. So they are powerless to protect themselves. So you can see, you might be able to see now how power and the perception of power, which is not something that you necessarily see concretely, right? You have to sense that. But see how that can be perceived as a piece of data that goes through the amygdala and says, wait a minute, when my control gets taken away, that's not safe for me, and I have to react to this particular way. And it's not, and that thinking's not happening in thinky brain. That's primitive. That's body brain back there. That's reptile brain. That's operating. So when we really get spooked by somebody's behavior, is it possible to drop the trauma lens in for a second and say, wait, could there be, what's behind that? Is there something going on behind that other than the fact that they don't respect me, or they're out of control, or I've got to have some kind of reactive measure? And we don't have to respond reactively to it, because we can understand a little bit better about what's going on for that person. So cultivating efficacy and personal control, because as you imagine, when you help people be effective, their level of control over their lives increases. Strength-based approaches, certainly that that concept has been around a while, but what does it mean to be strength-based? It goes back to that question. We're always trying to figure out what's wrong. Well, every single person has some strengths. And if you're really struggling to find that, and certainly it's been my experience that clients really struggle to be able to identify for themselves what is going well for them, or what's working and what's healthy for them. So you may have to do a little reframing. Something that may seem, somebody who out on the street can be a really good drug dealer, well, sounds like they might have some entrepreneurial skills, right? Even somebody who's a really good manipulator, it's not pretty, but boy, what if we could harness that ability to get people to do the things that they need to do? What if we could turn that into, take that power for good? So what if you were to start with what's already going well? And what if you were to have that conversation? What would that look like? So what's going well? It'd probably be pretty weird. But why is it weird? Because we don't ask those questions. So rather than really starting with what's wrong, what if we started with what's good and built on that? And when we do that, we can really start to cultivate the resiliency and cultivate the skill building. They're able to build some skills because they've got some already. So that understanding of trauma, being aware of trauma, again, just another reminder, one way to be more effective and perhaps enjoy your job more might be to understand those behaviors that trouble us the most as adaptations to trauma. And then if we were to just kind of take the last few minutes to talk about vicarious trauma and the necessity of self-care. Vicarious trauma is the stuff that happened to us as a result of the work that we do. So I may have a little less, I may have not gotten these slides in order, so let's talk about the helping relationship for a second. Now again, it's important to remember we're not talking about necessarily trauma therapists or even case managers. We're talking about shelter staff. Every helper that person comes in contact with. 4 components: respect, information, and one real brief way that I like to use information is that I'm not a case manager at the Salvation Army, but I've got lots of knowledge about the resources in Madison. So, and since I work on Friday nights and there's no case managers available to do things like print out a housing list or print out a job list or do those kinds of things or print out information about a resource. So I'll say, hey, wait a minute, are you familiar with this and that? And if that person isn't, I'll be like, listen, let me print that out for you and give that to you. Or if someone's like, yeah, I need to get a driver's license or a birth certificate, I can be like, hey, wait, let me print that application out for you that you can start working on now. So I can offer information even as a shelter worker. And connection, healing happens in the context of relationships. And then hope. You know, hope is not a word we use a lot around. You know, it's not bandied about in the shelter very often, right? Hope. But sometimes we hold the hope for people. Or we offer to hold the hope for some people and say, well, I got it here in this drawer. If you just know that it's there, and if you're ready to have it for yourself, you can, but I'm going to hang on to it for you. And then here's the vicarious traumatization. I think we're rolling down to the last few minutes. But here's just a big old news flash. The work we do is difficult. And as a result, I mean, the work we do is difficult because we work with traumatized folks with so little resources that offer us so little options and so many barriers, and in a system and in a society that, you know, tells us to, you know, tells us by the way they allocate resources to us that, hey, you've got to just sort of suck it up. And because we're helpers, and we've been trained to do that in our own lives, so we might start to feel frustrated. We might start to struggle. We might decide, hey, maybe I'd better look into accounting as a field, or maybe I should do something different because maybe this work isn't cut out for me. But the thing to remember that is vicarious traumatization is common, and it's a normal reaction to the work that we do. And it doesn't imply weakness, and it's not, you know, about asking, boy, do I belong in this field. You do. You're just kind of experiencing some compassion fatigue. And the antidote to this compassion fatigue is self-care. And of course, we're helpers, right? So we'll be like, oh, self-care, sure, I'll go do that. I'll go have a manicure after, you know, everyone else has got their things that they need to do. You know, my kid's got to go over here, and my partner's going to go over there, and, you know, I got to run this over for my mom and whatever, and then we'll be okay. You know, then I'll go do that. And of course, we never do it, right? So self-care prevents vicarious traumatization from becoming burnout. So self-care, this is, these are the principles of self-care. Let me just point out the balance one. What if we were able to have a third of the day to work, a third to play, and a third to rest? I'm imagining there's a lot of laughter at this point in the presentation, right? Because we all go, of course that's my life, of course it is. And connection. Just as our clients need relationships to heal and to be healthy, so do we. So when we isolate, we are heading on down the road to Crispy Town, right, where the burned out folks are. So stay off that road and reconnect with people. So that basically is this presentation today, one of two. And I thank you so much for the opportunity to present it to you. I don't know if we have time to grab any questions or what, but I think I had I didn't put my email up, but certainly folks can email me, or we can also, if there's specific things that we should talk about in the next webinar, and maybe we can put some Q&A time in the next webinar as well. So, again, I thank you, and look forward to talking with you again in a month. Because just as exhausting as that might have been, we've only scratched the surface.
Okay. All right, Robin. Thank you. We'll be able to make this presentation available for everyone. We recorded it, so if you wanted to get a copy of it, tell me, and I can make it available for you.
Okay. Super.
Okay.
Great. Thank you so much for your help.
Thank you to everyone.
Yeah, that's kind of a weird experience, though, because you don't, I mean, I just got done at 9 this morning. I was doing a presentation, to people in the room, and there's a